The Keynote 012 study had clinically meaningful findings using Pembrolizumab, and that was in recurrent or metastatic head and neck cancer. What is the challenge that you're looking at right now?
Well, last year we heard for the first time results from the Keynote 12 study showing that there was activity of Pembrolizumab in both HPV negative and HPV positive cancer. This year we've heard data from an expanded cohort of patients in that study, more than 100 patients treated. And what we're seeing response rates of about 20% in the HPV positive population, 27% in the HPV negative population. This, for the first time, is showing us that we can use immune therapies against relapsed metastatic head and neck cancer.
Now that is putting it in focus for your new study, which is going to do what?
Well, having seen that signal, it's now important to test whether or not Pembrolizumab is able to achieve results that are going to be better than standard of care. So in the Keynote 040 study, the randomization is between Pembrolizumab or standard of care physician choice chemotherapy, which represents one of three drugs, which would either be single agent cetuximab, single agent methotrexate, or single agent taxane-based chemotherapy.
Now, what about the HPV signal? Is that being taken into consideration as well?
Yes, it's a very interesting piece of information. So we know that the mutational burden of tumors is important in determining how well they respond to immune therapies. We know that the HPV negative tumors are probably highly mutated as a result of exposure to tobacco and alcohol. We also are seeing now that the HPV positive tumors are showing responses to Pembrolizumab as well, and that's probably due to both mutational burden but also the presence of viral antigens.
Now, what is it that Pembrolizumab is doing, or that you're hoping to do with it, within the molecular structure of what's happening in these patients?
Well, we're beginning to understand that, as with many other types of solid cancers, the tumor cells often will express on their surface the PD-L1 ligand, the programmed death ligand 1, that is capable of turning off the immune response that comes in to attack or to address the tumor. By blocking the ability of that ligand on the tumor cell to engage with the receptor on the T cells, what we're hoping to see is that we're able to wake up the immune response against the tumors.
And the earlier results did show something like half of the patients responding. Do you think that could happen here?
Well, the initial study showed about a fifth of the patients were responding to treatment. We would hope that we'll see results that will be as good as that, hopefully better in the phase 3 study. But hopefully we think that a significant proportion of patients with relapsed metastatic head and neck cancer can derive benefit from these therapies.
Because the 50% I was referring to is called disease control.
Well, disease control, of course, is another issue. I was talking about objective responses of the tumor, which is what most oncologists would recognize as activity of the drug. But of course, if you include the presence of stable disease, where the disease doesn't get bigger, then of course you can improve outcomes for a larger proportion of patients.
So where could this leave clinicians with? Does it represent, do you think, a potential new weapon for patients who don't have too many choices?
Well, we know that there is no treatment currently approved in second-line treatment of head and neck cancer as being the gold standard. What we're hoping for with this particular protocol is that we'll derive evidence of a gold standard therapy whereby Pembrolizumab will beat physician's choice second-line chemotherapy and potentially, if it's a positive result, and of course we're a long way from that, establish a new standard of care in these patients.
Of course, the harnessing of checkpoint inhibition is a new departure in head and neck cancer. Do you see this going a long way, perhaps even with other agents?
I think that's certainly the case. We know already that a number of the other pharmaceutical companies that have a range of different assets, including both PD-1 and PD-L1 blockade, are already in this space and are already assessing head and neck cancer patients. So I think we'll see a lot of activity in the coming years.
So what should practicing cancer doctors take away from this now here at ASCO?
I think they should take away the message that head and neck cancer, as with a number of other solid cancers, is now a disease that is very reasonably targeted with immune therapies, including checkpoint blockade, and they should watch very carefully this space because we will see data evolving in both the second line setting and then potentially in the first line setting for patients with relapsed metastatic head and neck cancer.